Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this community meeting to introduce you to current engagement opportunities for the new comprehensive plan. I'm Britt Ganser with the comprehensive planning team, joined by my colleagues Kayla Seibel, Sarah Long, Lisa Miller, and Nikki McDonald. We know that folks are coming to this meeting with different background information on this project and different levels of understanding about how the comprehensive plan impacts our community. So we're going to start by talking about how we're approaching this work and what has been done so far. Our purpose this evening is to introduce you to the current engagement opportunities for the comprehensive plan, walk through how to use the tools we've created for engagement, and share ways that you can engage your fellow community members on this work over the next couple of months. As we've started with some background, I invite you all, if you're willing, to share in the chat box your name, the neighborhood or community you are a part of, and share one thing that you value about the Durham community. We'll take a moment to let folks joining by phone share their responses in a few minutes. Just let me know if you'd like to share by hitting *9 to raise your hand. All right. I'm not seeing any folks raising their hand. Again, to do so, it's *9.
Brooke, just 1 second while I assign one of our interpreters. Okay. We'll let folks share in the chat.
Thanks everyone for sharing in the chat. Give folks just another moment. Awesome. Some of the answers in the chat. I value the creativity of our residents. I love Durham's unique cultural history. I value how much Durham residents care about their city. These are all really great. Okay, I'm gonna move right along. Okay, so our work on the new comprehensive plan started in the summer of 2019 as our work began. The city's equitable community engagement blueprint was being developed, and the city and county both were beginning to work towards more equitable engagement. Through early conversations with our colleagues in the Neighborhood Improvement Services Department, we established a commitment to work towards equitable engagement for the comprehensive plan based on the blueprint. So let's talk about what a comprehensive plan is and how it has and can impact equity in our community. Our comprehensive plan directs what can be built where in Durham. It guides what size and kind of homes can be built in different parts of the community, where schools and businesses can be located, and where streets should be built. The plan acts as a blueprint for how Durham will develop today and in the future. The plan includes recommendations and guidance for big decisions that a local government may make. How and where should farmland be created or preserved? How do we connect more residents to jobs, housing, and schools? What are Durham's infrastructure needs like water, sewer, transportation, and other services? What kind of environmental protection should we have? How should Durham care for its existing neighborhoods and longtime residents, particularly those who have been ignored or harmed by big decisions in the past? So Durham looks the way it does because previous plans and policies determined how it could grow and develop. In the past, government and private decisions about where to locate land uses, both desirable and less desirable, have not been equitable. This is not an accident and is one of the primary ways that racial discrimination is seen in our physical environment. For example, less desirable industrial land uses like incinerators, landfills, factories, and salvage yards have been placed within or near traditionally Black neighborhoods and away from traditionally white neighborhoods. At the same time, desirable land uses that are necessary for people to access daily resources, like small commercial areas and parks, are lacking or missing in many traditionally Black neighborhoods. Equitable access to the benefits of growth, development, and land use decisions are foundational in our current work to determine where different land uses should be located in the future. So with all of this in mind, we began this project in the fall of 2019 and winter of 2020 with listening and learning engagement for this project. We heard from over 1,000 residents what they wanted in an ideal Durham and what else was on their mind about Durham. With all of that input from residents, we asked, how do we listen to, respect, and honor the voice of residents who've been disinvested in and actively harmed by planning in the past? And how do we turn that lived experience into community goals and objectives? The community goals and objectives that were adopted by the county commissioners and city council this summer describe a clearly articulated vision for our residents for Durham's future. So now comes the hard work of translating this vision from our community into the technical planning tools that impact how land is used in our community. The new comprehensive plan will be made up of words and a map. The map will show a desired future place type for every property in the city and the county. The words include policy recommendations, which will be the focus of engagement next spring. And these policies will lay out instructions for how the planning department and the rest of Durham local government will work to make the vision of the community goals and objectives a reality, because there are limits to how much of our community's vision can be articulated solely through the place type map. So we have developed a draft community-wide place type map. The intent of this map is to apply the community's vision to actual places in our community. Our engagement over the next few months is focused on hearing from you how we can better reflect the community vision in the draft map. The place type map will replace the future land use map from our 2005 comprehensive plan. Since 2005, that map has been used to guide growth, plan where new services will be needed, and make decisions about whether to approve certain kinds of new development. However, the categories in the 2005 map are very general and do not provide enough detail about what places should be like. The proposed place type map includes more detailed information in the place type descriptions about what new development should look like, how it should function to serve residents and workers, and how it should be served by city and county services. To close out background on the project so far, we want to share some highlights of the kinds of places that residents want to see that came through in the community goals and objectives. Residents want all neighborhoods to have safe and easy walkable access to schools, community centers, shopping areas, restaurants, and green space. integrated within and around neighborhoods to allow us to access daily needs, connect with one another, and to build relationships. Residents want to see neighborhoods change incrementally to incorporate a variety of housing options that are affordable and attainable to those with the least access to housing. Residents want to see an improved transportation network and connectivity throughout Durham by prioritizing residents who walk, bike, roll, or ride transit. Residents want to see proposed developments that preserve or restore the surrounding natural areas and promote and encourage walkability. When vacant lots in already developed areas are filled in with new uses, residents want to see this development fit in with the scale of the neighborhood and provide access to daily needs. Residents also want to see some of the car-oriented places like shopping areas with large parking lots incrementally change through the addition of buildings and retrofits of existing sites. So these places become more walkable with safe pedestrian, bike, and transit access to and from the site. So now we have a short video to share that talks about the different pieces of the comprehensive plan. We'll have some time for questions and answers on all this information following.
Hello, this is a presentation brought to you by the Durham City County Planning Department about the different pieces of the comprehensive plan. Our community is constantly changing. Think about your neighborhood. What has changed? What has stayed the same? Change in our community has impacts for residents who live in Durham today. Many residents in Durham have not benefited from this change and have been actively harmed by it. We need a better plan that can help manage this change in a way that benefits all residents. In Durham, the City County Planning Department regulates how land is used. There are rules about what each property can be used for, called zoning. These rules also regulate what developers are allowed to build. Planning decisions affect how our neighborhoods look, how we access the resources we need, and what infrastructure is needed to support life in Durham. Over time, local government has regulated land in ways that give some people more access than others. Access can mean access to better schools, jobs, transportation, or green spaces. Think about your neighborhood. Can you afford to live there? Are there grocery stores, schools, or parks that you can easily and safely get to? What's missing? What do you need more of? The rules in Durham need to be rewritten to work towards complete communities where everyone has access to the things they need, particularly those who have not had this access in the past. To start rewriting the rules, the Durham Planning Department needs your help to create a new comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan outlines a community vision in the form of policies and a map that say what should be built where in Durham. In practice, a comprehensive plan's place type map and policies are used together to check if what a developer is proposing to build matches what the community wants to see. The place type map and policies help guide decisions made by elected officials about whether development should be approved. Also, the place type map and policies can help us decide if new zoning districts should be created to match what the community wants to see and can help work towards greater access to the things we need. As our community grows and changes over time, we will need to invest in the infrastructure to sustain our neighborhoods. Staff will use the place type map to understand where future water, sewer, or transportation demand might be based on what kind of development is expected where, and plan for new or upgraded infrastructure projects. Think of the comprehensive plan as a roadmap to the future we want to build together. How would you shape Durham? Thank you so much for watching. Please visit ENGAGEDurham.com to learn more about the Durham Comprehensive Plan and get involved today.
Okay, so before we begin going into some more detail on place types and the map, let's pause and find out what questions you have on the information shared so far. And you can drop any questions you have in the chat or raise your hand to speak. It looks like we have a question. What district or group is the South Side community? Let's see. I don't know offhand. Maybe one of my team members can help to look for that. In the meantime, we have another question. What type of infrastructure improvements are planned in East Durham? So I can speak a little bit more generally to this. The place type map has descriptions of the kinds of infrastructure that would be involved in certain place types for specific properties. So Kayla will talk about this in a couple of minutes, but you'll actually be able to look at our place type map specifically for your community, you can look up your address even and see what we have on the place type map right now. And you can look at the place type guide to see specifics about that type of place and also the kinds of infrastructure associated with that place type.
And I will add, the comprehensive plan doesn't get to the level of detail of specific infrastructure projects, but it describes what residents have told us they're interested in seeing. So things like sidewalks, bike paths, greenways, parks, bus service. So, and then other kinds of infrastructure will be described, like especially in our urban areas or suburban areas, water and sewer infrastructure. So it's more descriptive and less prescriptive about specific projects at this level. But we'll definitely look at the map in a second.
Okay, we have another question. Does internet access via fiber fall into an infrastructure type as far as a comprehensive plan is concerned? And my team can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that it may, it will. That is being talked about at a very high level right now in our infrastructure policy working group.
Yeah, I will just add that residents have brought up internet access, fiber, broadband as really important and should be included.
All right, we have another question. Will this place type map have the power to change what's on people's personal property? So the plan looks at future land use. So if a property is changing, then it may look at what that property may be in the future. So it won't affect your property as it is today. Let's see, another question. Are there any plans for local parks for each neighborhood and walking paths, to connect parks? So this is definitely something that the plan will consider at this stage in the project, and kind of generally it's more of a general comprehensive plan. So there's not any specific project level situations looking at specific parks, specific connections like that right now. But that is something that is being considered in our policy working groups and also kind of highlighted within our place types as well. Let's see. Another question is, do we know when the new infrastructure money will come to Durham and how it will be used in Durham? I don't have a lot of information on this. I'm sorry, maybe some team members might have more information. We can also definitely look into this and share more information after this meeting about that specifically. Looks like there's some conversation happening in the chat. Thank you all for the great questions, and there'll definitely be more time for discussion. Okay. Oh, I think one more question. Are there any comprehensive plans to preserve woods and wildlife habitats? Yes, we do have preservation, conservation policies that we will be writing, and that's in the early works right now. Again, I wish I could provide more specifics, but we're at a pretty high level right now. But that is in the conversation, yes. Awesome, let's see. Oh, okay, so before we move on, I think there's one more question. What are the people, institutions, challenges that might stand in the way of implementing the comprehensive plan? So the comprehensive plan is really big, and it involves not only the planning department, which is what our team is part of and representing here tonight, but it involves all of the different city and county departments. So we have to really work together to make sure this plan doesn't sit on the shelf and is used daily in making decisions. To adopt the plan, this will go through Planning Commission, City Council, and the Board of County Commissioners. I hope that answers as best I can to all of your questions. But again, we'll have time to discuss more as the meeting progresses. But thanks again for your questions. I think we'll shift to talking about the place type map and how to engage. That might help clear up some confusion if folks still have any but we'll definitely have more time later in the session to hear feedback and answer any more questions. And so I'll turn things over to Kayla for this section.
Great, thank you, Brooke. Thank you all again for your great questions in the chat. So good evening, everyone. My name is Kayla Seibel. I'll be walking through the second part of our agenda. We'll transition to talking about place type examples. We want to make sure you have a chance to see the map, to see the information we have online, so you can dive in deeper and look for specific areas on the map and try to answer some of those questions that are more neighborhood specific. So on the next slide, generally, we anticipate that some areas in Durham are less likely to change or will not experience a lot of change over the next couple of decades. Some examples of places like these are parks and protected green spaces. We have an image on the left of a park, or on the right, there's an image of an established residential area or a neighborhood where there are smaller lots, many different property owners. You may still see some renovations or changes to the outsides of buildings or additions of smaller homes behind existing homes, but we don't expect large-scale physical changes within neighborhoods in general. On the next slide, we do anticipate that some areas in Durham may experience more change over time over the next couple of decades. Places that could experience some more change in Durham may include land that doesn't have any existing buildings on it. As shown on the left, there's a field or a forested area. The image in the middle of a large parking lot, or like an image on the right of an older shopping center. Places like these that are maybe more suburban in character, again, those could see some more change over time in Durham. And so that's what we're looking at when we look at our map, or the different degrees of change that our community could see over time. On the next slide, we wanted to provide an example that was more relevant to East Durham, which is the topic of this community meeting, but we can also expand the conversation community-wide as well. When we're engaging on the map this fall, and here's an example of a place in Durham that could see some significant change over time. This is a Google map view of Wellins Village, or also known as the Village. It's an area, North Miami Boulevard and NC 98. The area currently provides goods and services to Durham residents. And we can see that there are, just from a Google map, existing restaurants, big box stores, groceries, other shops. This area is served by bus lines with bus stops, sidewalks in some places, and is served by city water and sewer. It could be an area where some of the lots here see the addition of new buildings or renovations over time. On the next slide, these are two images showing the Wellins Village area. You can see, if you're not familiar, but I know most of you are, you can see large properties with large parking areas, standalone stores, or large strip malls. There's also a lot of impervious surfaces in this area, meaning that a lot of the land here is covered in either concrete or asphalt, where rainwater cannot easily pass through to the soil underneath. This can cause things like flooding when it rains. So some of these lots have buildings or structures on them now and have minimal green space. So any new development in this area would not typically involve clear cutting a forest or disrupting a protected natural area like you might see on the edges of town. It's already has, like I said, has buildings and impervious surfaces on here. So when we think about places like this and how it might change in the future, we look at a few considerations, including things like I mentioned, existing conditions, what patterns we're seeing in development right now, how the sites might be served by infrastructure or already served by services. And we also consider community input and engagement that may have already been done in these places in the past, and what residents want to see here. But a lot of times we are not always sure what residents want to see. We have not done engagement in some of these areas in the past. So that is why we have an initial draft of the place type map that we're showing you all this evening. We need Durham residents to share feedback on specific places and geographies because you know where you live and you know the places that you experience every day. And so we'd love to hear what you think, especially about areas that you go to, that you live in. So specifically for the Wellins Village example, our team looked at how the area has currently large big box stores, parking lots, restaurants, has access to frequent bus service. And because of these characteristics, this area could see change in the future that adds more buildings to what are currently large parking lots. So what that looks like on the place type map is a designation called Transit Opportunity Area, which describes a primarily commercial place today that has the potential to become walkable, accessible to nearby residents, and serves the surrounding neighborhoods with a focus on bus connections. So on the next slide, I just want to show you more about what we mean. Don't try to read the slide. We just wanted to show you a snapshot. The place type map that we'll dig into in a second is also accompanied by a place type guide, which provides details on what the place type is. For the transit opportunity area place type, which is what the Wellins Village area is on the map now, shows that the place type designation impacts what can happen in this area. So the place type assigned right now, transit opportunity area, would mean a lot of change, and that kind of change would look like possibly new buildings, new commercial and residential. And we really envision in the place type guide says that it's well connected by sidewalks, bike paths, bus service. It should be dense with buildings set closer together, so different than where it is now, where buildings are farther apart, but designed, and this is really important, designed in a way that serves residents who are using this as a transfer point to get to other places in Durham, and seeks to minimize negative impacts on the surrounding neighborhoods. And on the next slide, so if that kind of change, if what we described as a transit opportunity area is not what the community wants to see, there's a lot of concerns if it's not what the community wants to see there, then another place type that would fit here could be a suburban commercial place type. This would be similar to what is currently there now, but with opportunity for newer buildings to be added on the underused parking areas, maybe less compact with buildings farther apart. But residents have told us that they still want these places to improve over time to add the things that residents in nearby areas need, such as better sidewalk connectivity, green spaces. These are smaller changes that if residents have feedback that they would like to see here instead of larger changes, that's the kind of conversation we need to hear from y'all. And if you have thoughts on that, we have a section at the end of our agenda where we want to hear more thoughts about what you see in your neighborhood and what you'd like to see more or less of. And of course, providing input on the map as well. So for this round of fall engagement, again, this is a big opportunity with this process that residents have a first say and what areas in Durham should look like in the future before a developer proposes anything, before a project is proposed, before an application is being reviewed by elected officials to consider for new development. Staff has relied heavily on past engagement efforts so far to make this first draft, but we need your help to understand what changes, what edits we should make. On the next slide, just another note about the place type categories. And this is a quick snapshot of what the map looks like, and I'll share my screen in a moment. Durham is a big place, and this plan covers both the city and the county. So our places range from very dense, urban, walkable, to rural, agricultural, and larger open spaces. We have 20 different place type categories, and they're supposed to encompass that broad range of places and still be broad categories. So as we progress further in the planning process and to get into more specific policies, we'll begin to see what more specifics we need to get in the future about what kinds of development regulations we need for our places. So the map is broad. I did want to mention that another part of this that helps us understand how to guide new development are the comprehensive plan policies, which are being worked on right now. These policies are things that we cannot easily map and are crucial to guiding how development should occur, and not just what it looks like. So you've heard me talk a lot about character of buildings and green spaces and infrastructure, but policies encompass all the other things as well that folks care about. So consider how development should fit in with the surrounding area, who the development is serving, other details like street trees and sidewalks and green spaces. Housing is a huge one. So basically the place types provide a general idea of what the different areas should be in the future, but we can get more specific as we go along with the planning process with the policies. We're working with groups of residents and staff right now to brainstorm policies. So these draft policies that go along with the map will be included in engagement in the spring, so spring 2022. I know that was a lot. Thanks for hanging in there. So with that, I just want to briefly show you the engagement tools we've developed so you know where to find them and how to provide feedback. I'm going to start sharing my screen now. Let's see. Just one moment. All right. Okay, so while I walk through this, I won't be able to see the chat. So hopefully you can get some answers in the chat, or I'll cover them once I'm done showing you what we have. So this is our social pinpoint website. It's our engagement website for the plan. And engagement this fall is focused on hearing about the types of places you would like to see in your neighborhoods in the future. Place types are used to describe and map the kinds of places we want to see in our future. And like we mentioned before, the map is based on previous comprehensive planning engagement, and we'd love to hear what you think. So this screen is showing our website, and we'll add the links in the chat. It describes what phase the project is in, and is a place where you can participate and provide input. Scrolling down to the community meetings, you are in community meeting number 2. Thank you for joining us again tonight. We had one previous community meeting, and we have a recording here. So this is also where we'll post a recording of this meeting. On this page, you will find, again, for the future community meetings that we're having, a place to register for those. And then we have these 3 buttons here on places to engage. We're going to talk about the place type map, the place type guide, and then look very quickly at the resident engagement toolkit. So I've talked a lot about the map. I want to make sure we show it to you. So clicking on the place type map button, this is an interactive map, meaning you can zoom in and out and read about the proposed place types for an area and add comments. This is a splash screen that gives instructions on what to do here. You can dismiss it by clicking I agree. All it says is that you've read a little bit about the map, and then click OK. So the splash screen gives instructions like I mentioned, and once you check the box to dismiss that splash screen, you will be zoomed all the way out so you can see all of Durham County. On the right-hand side here, you have a legend. This legend includes all the draft place types. They are hyperlinked, so you can click on each one to open the place type guide description. So we just take a brief look at this transit opportunity area that we talked about very briefly. It opens up the one-pager of what this transit opportunity area means, the different housing and land uses residents have said they want to see here, different transportation types for this place type and green space. And there's also the Spanish version of this as well. Now back to the map. The legend includes 2 other designations here, an urban growth boundary and a future growth area. The urban growth boundary is a line that staff is proposing. It's this outer line here. Staff is proposing that city water and sewer not be extended past to keep these areas on the outer edges more rural and protect our environmental resources. The future growth areas, these are adjacent to the urban growth boundary. They're highlighted here. These are areas that could see significant change if the city decides to add water or sewer or fire service to these areas in the future. So that's what those future growth areas are. And then the rest of the city and county has a place type assigned to every property. And you can zoom in and out to see what those are. Just covering very briefly a few tools you have on the map. There's a plus button on the left here, as well as a minus button that will zoom in and out. It usually takes a couple of seconds to load. It's a big map, but shouldn't take too long. The printer button is like a little printer button here that allows you to print the map if you want to zoom into an area that you're most interested in. You can print a PDF of that map and print it out or mark it up at home if you prefer that way of interacting. We also have this square button here where you can change the background if you prefer to look at the satellite imagery or a different background for the map. There's some other helpful tools as well, but those are the basics. And yeah, so with that, I think we're ready to begin exploring how you add feedback. So to find a location, there's an address bar up here. Just as an example, let's say you're interested in seeing what place type City Hall is designated. So if you just type in an address, 101 City Hall Plaza. Let me type that again. City Hall Plaza. You can just press enter. That's the best way to do it. And it zooms you right in to that parcel or that property. So this is City Hall right here. And you can see that it's this blue color. You also have an acronym DT, which means downtown. So if we look at our legend, you can see that the downtown place type is right here. And when you click on a parcel or property, you get a pop-up here, which you can decide to look at the full place type guide, or you can navigate to the place type guide on the side here and click add comment. Clicking add comment will take you to a very quick survey, mostly open-ended. And the first question is your comment about a specific property on the map, or are you interested in giving us general feedback about a larger area or a neighborhood or an intersection? If you click that you are really just interested in giving us feedback about a bigger area than just one property, it'll ask you about what that area is, if you could be as descriptive as possible so we know what part of Durham you're talking about, and we can more easily trace your comment, your feedback. We're really interested in hearing from you feedback that's tied to specific locations to inform changes to the map and understand what you need in your communities. So scrolling down, it'll also show you very quickly where you pinpointed your comments, and it asks you a series of questions. If there are things you love about your neighborhood, we'd love to hear that. What do you want to preserve? What do you want to see more of? What do you want to see less of in your communities? Are there specific types of land uses that you need, like recreation, entertainment, business, housing, and any other feedback you'd like to share? On the next, if you click through the survey, there's demographic questions on the second part of this survey. Those demographic questions are important for us to understand who we're hearing from and who we're missing, so that we can do further engagement to include more perspectives and more voices in this process. So when you click submit, your comment will appear on the map, but your demographic questions or your demographic answers will not. Those will remain private and remain anonymous. So it'll show as a pinpoint here. This kind of bluish pinpoint will be where your comment shows. And this is just a test comment here. But you can see that other residents have placed some comments already on the map. Over here, for example, folks have filled in some information and some thoughts about specific areas. So you can also browse other residents' comments there. So if you click this home button, it looks like a little house. It'll take you back to the full county view, especially if you lose your place and you're poking around. That's a good tool as well. That's how you navigate the place type map. We have a video that we're working on uploading. That's this tutorial that I ran through just now, but it's recorded. So if you need to slow down the instructions or speed up certain sections, you can do that. And of course, we are available to help you navigate this and answer any questions if you have them. Just really quick before I hand it over, this is a lot of information. We wanted to just share with you. So we have two other things you can do on our engagement site. One is look at the draft place type guide. If you would like to provide feedback on what these categories are or what they say, there's a very brief survey here that you can take about the place type guide. You can download the full guide here. or you can read through and collapse these different categories on the page. So this is, again, another open-ended survey. If there are particular place types that you want to comment on, you can do that here. And then one last thing, the resident engagement toolkit. This is where we hope that you will help us reach other community members. Since this engagement is geographically specific and covers all of Durham, we need your help to share information and encourage others to provide their feedback on the place type mapping guide. So this page right here has 2 videos. The one we showed today, introducing you to the pieces of the comprehensive plan, and the tutorial walking through how to engage online. We also have different graphics and flyers and information about the plan in general, as well as the community meeting flyers if you want to help get more residents registered for future meetings. And then also, especially if you have folks in your neighborhoods who do better with paper surveys, there are ways that you can download there's a map activity. There's a print of the demographic survey and a sign-in sheet if you're engaging with folks in your neighborhood using not the digital tools, but more paper or analog tools. So with that, I'm going to hand it over in a second. Our engagement period ends January 31st. So there is some time, and we'll make sure we have all these links in the chat for you. Are there any, let me stop sharing. Are there any questions before we move on to the discussion portion? I'm catching up on the chat. Thank you, Lisa, for answering some of these questions. There's a lot. Are there ones that we want to highlight for folks on the phone?
I think there were some great questions around having community members involved in the work and involving residents that don't have access to a computer. So just letting folks know that we have 2 part-time positions for community members to be involved in our day-to-day work on this project that are ENGAGEDurham program assistants. And one of those is focused on is a bilingual position, which is actually open right now. We can put the job posting in the chat if you know of anybody who might be interested and is bilingual, to help kind of bring community member perspectives into the day-to-day work. And then in addition, we have been working with engagement ambassadors who are residents, particularly focusing on residents who are connected to and part of communities that have been marginalized by planning processes in the past, that have been helping us make connections, engage residents in their communities, and are being provided a stipend for that. And then I think there's another question about broadband and technology. That is going to be part of what's considered with the policies that will be, those drafts will be coming out for engagement and resident input in the spring. And then I think one other question that came up was about kind of water and sewer in North Durham. So just wanted to make it clear there. So we're looking at a plan for the entire county. And so there are areas outside of the city where extending city water and sewer would be very expensive and would also bring development into areas that would impact our water quality, our farmland access for our community, and kind of the amount of trees that we're able to preserve. So there are the areas that are outside of that kind of thick black line on the map that Kayla showed. Those would be served, would be much less development, have well water and septic, as opposed to city water and sewer. So just wanted to highlight some of those. And the last question that I just saw, the timeline for completing the plan. So after our engagement in the spring around the policies, we'll have gotten input from folks around both the map and the policies that we'll be pulling all together and then sharing that back out with the community as we then try and bring that through the adoption process with our elected officials. So our hope is that the plan would be completed by the end of 2022. And thanks for that tip, Vanessa. The Bragtown Branch Library apparently has a laptop kit that folks can borrow with a hotspot. So if there are folks that you know of that might benefit from that, that's great information. Thanks, Vanessa. And thanks, Kayla, for sharing that job posting. Okay, so thank you, Kayla and Brooke, for sharing all of that information. I know it's a lot that we're sharing with you all today, but we wanted to discuss kind of at a high level what the comprehensive plan is, why it's important, and specifically talk about the police types, which are the focus of our engagement that's going on now through the end of January. Kayla shared the walkthrough of the map tool, and now we wanted to spend a little bit of time having a condensed version of the kind of discussion that we hope that the tool will help generate. So our discussion today will be focused roughly on East Durham. Don't worry too much about what that exact boundary is. It's just a general reference, helping us kind of get folks funneled into a meeting where they might have folks from similar neighborhoods and have similar concerns to discuss. So to get us grounded, we just wanted to encourage everyone to start by closing your eyes and thinking about the space and land that comes to mind when you think of East Durham. Maybe imagine that you're walking through your community and looking at the land and the space around you. What do you see when you look and move around the area? What are the patterns there, and what sticks out to you in terms of how land is being used? There are some taller buildings, some that are shorter, some that are closer together, some further apart. There are places with little or no buildings at all. And some places and land may have changed, maybe a lot in your recent memory. So go ahead and open your eyes. And to start, we just want to ask a question that we'll be sharing in the chat as well to get us started. The question is, what changes to how land in your community is being used have you seen? And what change would you like to see? And we encourage you to be specific here. This part of the plan is talking about specific pieces of property. Every piece of property in Durham will have a designation on the place type map, which reflects the vision of how we want that place to be, how it should change or stay the same, or how much it should change. So I would encourage folks, if you'd like to put something in the chat, feel free. Also, if folks are interested in sharing aloud, you can do that by raising your hand and we can recognize you. But again, what kinds of changes to land in your community, how land is being used, have you seen? And what kind of change would you like to see? I'll just give folks a moment to think about that and to type responses or find the raise your hand button. see. So we've got a couple of questions that are certainly interrelated. We see a lot of gentrification. Yes, we know that that's something that we have a huge need to address in our community, and in particular parts of our community. And we've got a question here about how we'll include affordable housing or housing affordable to everyone in our community. And that's a great question. That is going to be a big focus of what comes out of the policy recommendations. The map is looking more at what kinds of housing in terms of shape and size and how many units end up in one place. And the policies are going to get at some of the things that can't be mapped. And access to housing for everyone is a huge emphasis, and that's reflected in the goals and objectives that are adopted. Let's see, we've got the East Regional Library, pharmacies, and a grocery store, half an hour's walk from my house, weren't there when we moved in and are great. I would love to see things that are even closer, and more bus stops would be amazing. Yeah, that theme of being able to, have things in closer proximity to where people need them, having sidewalks connecting folks to those things that they need, or safe places to catch the bus and bus service are definitely things that we're hearing a lot. See, we've got another comment here. We've seen a lot of construction and development on spaces for cars, like highways. We'd like to see more development on walkable spaces and bike lanes. Yes, that's another thing that's come through very clearly in the engagement with residents so far, is that we've spent enough time focusing on cars and not enough time focusing on people. And so that's a huge part of what we're trying to fix with this plan. Let's see, right now I walk a half an hour to the bus stop and it's always late. Yes, we have been looking as we create the draft map, also at the transit plan that has been in development over the last 2 years, and trying to make sure that we're coordinating what happens with how land is used with what is planned for bus service. So that's another big priority. Let's see. We've got another comment here, enclosed glass structures in the woods where we can safely enjoy the outdoors, for scaredy cats. That's it. That is a unique and great suggestion. I think making sure that there are ways for everyone in our community to enjoy and have access to natural areas and the outdoors is definitely something that's come through a lot. Let's see. Someone shared, I see a lot of wooded areas that are being gobbled up by developers without consideration of existing neighborhoods. Yeah, that's a big part of the kind of the growth management kinds of things that Kayla shared, that line where we want to make sure we're not developing beyond, and then also thinking about just any development that does come in, what kinds of what are the priorities that we have about how land is used, so that we can make sure that we're keeping trees and natural environment that are essential for our well-being. We've got another comment here. Wow, y'all have so much to say. This is fantastic. I will try and keep keeping up. Also, I'd like for affordable housing that's actually livable, not like McDougall Terrace where they had to live in hotels for months because it wasn't safe. Yeah, safe, affordable housing and places that people can feel comfortable, safe, and proud to be in as a part of our community is really important. I have seen more dense development, more townhouses and apartments, more impervious spaces. I would like to see more community voices involved in the design for new development. I would like to see more smaller houses being built at 80% AMI. That's area median income. I would like to see a more efficient and holistic transportation system. Yeah, those are great. And I think I would highlight here part of what we can influence with the comprehensive plan is what does the development process look like? What are developers asked to do as part of that process? And that is, there's a couple of objectives that speak to that. Yes, we need a great local bus system. Yes, I think we have been hearing that very loud and clear that our local bus system needs a lot of improvements, both the service itself, how frequent it is, where service goes, but also how people access it, what the conditions are that they're waiting in, providing bus shelters. We want sidewalks on Mineral Springs Road and more sidewalks in general so my kids can walk safely, yes. I think that one of the quotes from early on in our engagement was talking about blanketing the city in sidewalks, and I thought that was a really great visual of what we've heard consistently from residents. We need complete streets plans across the city. Also, the transportation plan currently is designed for destinations, not people who need to get to the destination. Yeah, so complete streets, if folks aren't familiar, is just looking at the streets not just as a place for cars to move, for people to drive, but for humans to inhabit, and all of the different ways that people move around the city to be safely accommodated. I would love to see more accessible, affordable food places. Fresh products, the closest grocery store is 15 minutes away. Issue around transportation, must have transportation. Yeah, that's another, one of our objectives is around healthy food access. So as we're looking at the map, I think this is a great example, trying to identify, are there places in your community that you think this is a place where we want to identify that an opportunity to create a small grocery or other food market would be desirable, trying to start placing those things on the map. And then the policies that will be developed will work hand in hand with those. We do need more transportation in East Durham. Yes, that's something that we've heard quite a bit. First thoughts are sidewalks and bike lanes, improvement to the village, need beautification, no high rise in neighborhoods. Yeah, so making sure that in neighborhoods that anything that happens is respectful of the existing neighborhood and the existing residents. That's another important. Access to better parks for children to play. Yes, access to safe, well-maintained parks is definitely a great, something we've heard quite a bit as a desire. Let's see, it's great to see more painted bike lanes on streets like Liberty and Alston, but we really need protected bike lanes with parking closest to car lanes and bikes closest to the curb. Ideally concrete barriers protecting bikes and pedestrians. Yeah, it's a great, so thinking about how do we keep folks that are less protected in their mode of transportation. If you're walking or you're biking or you're pushing a stroller or rolling in a wheelchair, you have less protection than someone in a car. So how do we design and use our streets so that those folks are safe and their safety is prioritized? Let's see, places, oh, I think I finally caught up. Places where people can gather and get to know each other in a fun and safe way. We still need to be able to see stars in the sky at night, and we need fresh fruit and veggies. Yeah, those are some great, thinking about how do our strategies and policies around light pollution impact both the quality of life for residents, but also what the impact is on the kind of environment and ecosystem around us. making sure that we're creating positive and safe connections for us to build community and relationships, and access to fresh and healthy and affordable food. Those are all really great comments. Yes, that is my cat that is hungry. Sorry, y'all. And then we've got another one here. Would like to see more affordable housing for people who live at 30% of area median income and above. Like to see more adult, youth, and children's entertainment areas. Also more low-cost grocery stores, better bus stops and sidewalks, more beautiful murals that tell the stories of different communities, more walking trails, and open green concert areas. This is great. So that list right there is a fantastic example of these are things that we would love to see you all think about where in your community you might want to see these things in particular, right? Where do we need, where are there opportunities for green spaces to be preserved? Where are there opportunities to infill housing that is more affordable? Where are there opportunities for creating new entertainment kinds of businesses? Those are all things that we would love, as specific as feedback as folks can give us on the map. And these are all really great suggestions and ideas around kind of how we make the vision that we've heard. These are very consistent with what we've heard from residents in the goals and objectives that have been adopted. Got a couple more here, more community centers or other type of spaces that teenagers can easily access. Yeah, that's safe spaces where young people are welcome and can interact with each other. That seems really important, and like those spaces are disappearing sometimes. And we need a cannery and an arts and crafts factory. And then can we fish at the lakes? I think that you can fish at the lakes, but I honestly don't know the answer to that question. If anyone else in this session does, feel free to drop it in the chat. But I love these creative ideas. Thanks for sharing, everyone. Let's see, I'll let folks just see if anyone has any more that they'd like to add. Can we use the plan to fix food deserts? Great question. So this is a great example to think about how the place type map, the policies work, and the policies work together. So we can identify places on the map where we think this would be a great place for a grocery store. So probably the place type that would be most appropriate would be something like neighborhood services. So that's intended to be the kinds of uses that people need access to, like daily or weekly. Finding places within neighborhoods that wouldn't be disruptive to neighborhoods, but would provide that access, and mapping that is the first step. And then we can work on implementation of that. We can look at what kinds of incentives does the city have in order to try and draw certain kinds of businesses in? What changes to the rules that apply to the land can we make to align with that place type? So changing the zoning of a property to allow a grocery store. Those are things that we can do to try and bring a grocery store, provide food access in neighborhoods where there currently is a food desert. A 65 plus dating scene, that's another, these are so creative, I love it. I think that they're definitely, as we're talking about different entertainment and kind of community building and relationship building opportunities, that is very much in line with what we've heard people want to see more of, more ways that residents can connect with each other in many different ways. Let's see, maybe the village could be a village with homes for people. Yeah, so the example that Kayla shared when looking at the village and kind of the two different place types that she mentioned, the suburban commercial place and the transit opportunity area, those are getting at what level of change people are comfortable seeing. And I think we had a comment earlier from someone talking about concern about investment bringing displacement or gentrification. And so thinking about what level of change to this area and then what are the policies that need to go along with that change can make sure that this investment is serving people in who are already in the neighborhood, in nearby neighborhoods, and who the village currently serves. But looking for ways that instead of trying to build things new out on the fringe where there's less bus access, it's more expensive to serve with water and sewer, finding places that we can infill more housing, more of the neighborhood services that people need, more places where people can work, trying to find places to infill that in our community. That's kind of what that example was trying to get at, and really looking at what level of change are we comfortable with in that place, and doing that across the community. So, and we've got a couple more comments here. We've got the population continues to age, live longer. We need some senior citizen centers. Yeah, that's another thing that we've heard a lot, is making sure that we're planning for multi-generational spaces. So not just spaces that cater to our elders or spaces that cater to young people, but those are important too, but also working to build neighborhoods and community that is multi-generational, where people in different points in life can be in connection together. Let's see, does the map allow you to be specific about what you want to see? For example, keep businesses in Hayti, Heritage Square, but make sure they are BIPOC owned if that's possible. That's a great question. So the survey is open-ended. So as you're putting a pin on the map, you can share whatever you'd like to. This is an example of where the map wouldn't be something that would indicate this is a business area that is BIPOC owned, but the policies, we can look at ways to incentivize and to try and build capacity and opportunity for BIPOC owned businesses. So I think that feedback in the map is very useful, even if the map can't reflect it, because we can take that input and bring it into the work of developing policies. Let's see, also, how about our community is our mall? I'm not sure I totally understand that. But if you want to share more in the chat, I'd be happy to share that out as well. But each one teach one community. This is great, y'all. These are fantastic comments and suggestions. And I want to encourage all of you to go and take a look at the map, to leave comments on it, the kind of feedback that you've shared today. We're collecting all of this evening, but we know that all of you know you're part of our community. You know it better than folks who don't live in, you know, and interact in the community in the particular way that you do. And that really the best way for us to end up with a map and with policies that are reflecting our community and our priorities and our experiences is for us to do, to really hear from the full diversity of our community about what people are seeing and want to see, and what kinds of things we want to see in particular locations. We've got what about developments in floodplain areas? Yeah, so that's another thing, kind of a combination of mapping and policy. So there's definitely been some work in the past to try and identify floodplain areas as places for the city and the county to try and purchase or obtain easements to preserve that land without development. But there are other places we haven't been able to do that yet. And so looking at what kind of policy we can write to work towards not developing in the floodplain and really going through all of our floodplain and looking at ways to acquire easements or land is definitely very helpful. Help the visually impaired see the map and we'll give input to. That is a great, so thanks for that. If there are particular areas, parts of your neighborhood, parts of the community that you want to give input on and are unable to do that through the map, if you are willing to and able to reach out to me through ENGAGEDurham at durhamnc.gov, then we can work together. If folks who are visually impaired, can kind of talk through their input and we can add it to the map. For folks, we are very willing to do whatever we can. Maps are really tricky when it comes to visual impairment in terms of trying to describe them. And so, yes, please reach out and I'll put that email address in the chat again. ENGAGEDurham at durhamnc.gov. Okay, well, we are getting close to our time, so I just want to wrap up with a few closing kind of announcements and things to share with you all. Bear with me. And thanks again, everyone, for sharing. This has been really great. So just a couple of quick items to go through as a reminder. This phase of engagement will continue through January 31st. That's of next year, 2022. Once this phase of engagement closes, we'll be compiling everything that we've heard from the different ways that we're engaging folks, and then we'll be working on revising the place type map in a way that reflects the engagement or the input we've heard through engagement. The next phase of engagement, which will begin in the spring, as we mentioned earlier, will focus on getting community input on draft policy recommendations for the new plan. The planning team has committed to the City Council and County Commissioners that we work to understand who we're hearing from as we do all of our engagement for this plan. This is important so we know who we're hearing from, who we're not hearing from, so we can adjust our engagement and outreach approaches and try and make sure that we're reaching folks that we haven't been, to make sure that we are ending up with work that is reflective of the full diversity of our community. Our team is sharing a link to a demographic survey in the chat right now. We would really appreciate it if you take just a couple minutes to fill that out so we can understand who we're reaching in this meeting today. Thank you in advance. As part of that demographic survey, we'd also like to hear your thoughts, feedback or reflections on how the meeting went. We take feedback seriously and we'll work to make changes and adjustments as we go if we hear that things are or aren't working as well as they could. Also, just a reminder, there will be a recording of this meeting made available on the city YouTube page and on the social pinpoint engagement page that was shared earlier, and we'll send a link out to that as follow-up. And finally, we just wanted to make one more plug for getting involved in the process. That's what my cat's trying to tell you all about. For getting other folks that you know in the community involved as well. We're dropping a link to the place type map in the chat that Kayla walked us through. If you can tell your friends and family and neighbors, take a look at the map yourself, bring the resident engagement toolkit to a neighborhood group or community organization that you know, and encourage folks to explore it and give feedback as well. We're also providing a link to the resident engagement toolkit that has links as well as downloadable options for providing hard copies of things that folks are have less digital access. So with that, I'm just going to take one more look at the chat. Thanks, team, for sharing those links. And thank you all so much for your time this evening, for your great questions and feedback. And on behalf of our team, thank you and have a great evening.